What I want to do is talk to you about how I ended up going from being an investment salesperson to being a lifestyle coach, because obviously that's quite a switch. I was in investments for 13 years and I loved it, quite frankly, but I had to change my life for one reason or another. I didn't really know where to start, so I decided to start with where it had most significance for me. It's where it really started to make sense. So I'm going to go back about 3.5, 4 years ago, and that's when I started to feel really poorly. So it was just kind of gradual to start with. I was very tired. I'd go to sleep and wake up really like a foggy head. I remember being at work and looking at the paper and the words would just be swimming. So just saying, about 4 years ago I started to become quite poorly. I'd wake up very tired, my head was very foggy. I remember being in the office and somebody would be kind of flicking the pen on the other side of the room and it was all I could hear. The words would be swimming on the page for me. I remember talking to a friend at work and I could barely keep my eyes open. I was just really tired all the time, and it wasn't like I was out partying. I was going to bed and living a pretty healthy life. I always had quite a healthy diet. I also had quite a lot of rashes on my body. Maybe perfumes would set me off or certain foods, but there was so many rashes that I couldn't really tell what it was. I also had in the summer like 2 weeks where pollen would set me off and I wouldn't be able to breathe properly for a couple of weeks at a time. I had real digestive issues, a bit of a taboo subject on social media, but kind of constipation, just a lot of pain, a lot of bloating. My body was bloated, so I'd gained a lot of weight, but it wasn't ever kind of rolls of fat. It was more like somebody had pumped me up with a balloon pump and I just got bigger all over, including my face and my eyes. My hair was falling out. I had really bad PMT. I was quite sensitive. I was short-tempered. I took everything quite personally. I actually had a medical at work around this time, and they pointed out that my white blood cell count was quite high and said it was probably an infection. I actually later learned that that was my immune system going crazy because I have an autoimmune thyroid condition. But that wasn't picked up and it was kind of ignored. So it got to a point where I was feeling quite sick, so I did some research online about my thyroid. And there's quite a few symptoms for a thyroid problem, underactive. There's about 50 in total. So I printed off this form and I ticked all the ones that applied to me. And it was probably about 2/3 of them. And I took it to the doctors. It was the first time I've met her. It was a new doctor. And I said, look, I've got all of these symptoms. I'm not feeling very well. Please, can you run some blood tests for my thyroid? And she said, no problem. So I went away. But before I got those blood tests done, I'd gone to London with work. We did an all-day team meeting, and afterwards it was tradition to go for drinks. So the team said, are you coming along, Natalie? And I said, you know what, I don't feel very well, so I'm going to go home. So I did. I went home and I sat on my TV, in front of the TV and tried to chill out. And what I noticed is that my heart was just pounding. It was just really fast in my chest. I tried to ignore it, carry on watching TV, take some deep breaths and relax. And then, well, once you realise that your heart's pounding, it's quite hard to turn it off. You suddenly become really aware of it. So it's literally all I could feel, just pounding away in my chest. So I thought, okay, I'm going to call my auntie, because she's a nurse. Nothing to do with heart, but I thought, you know, she's medical. She might be able to tell me what's going on. So I called her up and she said, can you take the pulse for me? So I took my pulse. I gave her the number. I forget what it was. And she said in a really calm voice, okay, that is quite fast. And I thought, crap, she's put on her calm nurse voice. That means there's something really wrong. So I went really hot and said to her, I think I'm having a panic attack. What's going on? So she said, can you go to the bathroom and get a flannel and put it on the back of your neck to kind of calm yourself down? I was actually downstairs, so I went to the kitchen. And at that time, no one had a key to my house. So I went to the kitchen to get a wet towel for my neck, and I unlocked the front door at that time because if it wasn't unlocked, no one could get in, and I didn't know what was happening to me. So in that time, my auntie was actually calling my mum. I'm in the kitchen with a wet flannel on my neck, absolutely sweating out and just burst into tears. So I've taken off loads of my clothes, lying on the floor in a pool of tears, not knowing what's happening to me. All of a sudden, my mum walks through the door and the tears just flooded. I was like, what's happening to me? What's going on here? So we sat on the floor and she comforted me and calmed me down. Basically. So she went home and I tried to go to bed, but every time I went to go to sleep, my heart was still pounding and I thought I was going to die, and I couldn't sleep. So come the morning, I was exhausted. I was really emotional and I was really worried. I called my doctors and said I need an emergency appointment, and they said actually you need to call the ambulance, so I did. They came out and heart monitor, checked me out and said, I think you've had a panic attack, but we'll get you into the doctors today. So I went to the doctors, the same doctor I'd seen the week before, and explained I had all these thyroid problems, and she confirmed that she would run these blood tests for me. And her response was to offer me antidepressants, which, look, I'm not against them. I think there's probably a time and a place for them, but I was really disappointed that that was her first port of call, because she didn't know me for 5 minutes, and she was basing it on this one isolated incident. Well, second isolated instance, actually, because I'd spoken to her the week before about my thyroid. And I think if she thought I was depressed, then she should have called me back the following week and monitored me, rather than just offering me antidepressants. And, you know, I was adamant that it was my body that was sick and not my mind, and I needed some physical assistance. So I kind of said, thanks, but no thanks. And I went away quite annoyed and decided that I would do my own research. And I started looking online. I came across these thyroid groups, which were really enlightening. I had had this thyroid problem for about 10 years already. It runs in my family. My nan, my aunt, my mum, and my nan's mum had it too, so it's hereditary. But what nobody knew is that 90% of people with an underactive thyroid have autoimmune. So it's not just that your thyroid stops working, it's that your body attacks your thyroid. So the doctors can keep giving me thyroid replacement drug, which is called thyroxine or levothyroxine. But all that does is replace the function that my thyroid had. It doesn't actually stop the attack on my thyroid. So over time, I'm going to need more and more of that drug to replace the thyroxine, or the natural thyroid drug that my body is not producing anymore. So I decided to look into other ways to help my body to stop this attack on my thyroid, so that I could prevent it getting worse and worse. I was already suffering quite a lot of symptoms, tired, overweight, exhausted, bloated, rashes, digestive issues. I also had a big goiter. So when your thyroid is not working, it swells to compensate. And I just had this ring around my neck. And actually now I've got a dip in here, but I didn't have that before. And it used to feel like someone was doing this to me. Or on other occasions, it felt like suddenly just a golf ball would appear in my throat. So I decided to find another way to help myself, the natural way. So what I came across is something called the autoimmune protocol. And this basically removes inflammatory foods from your diet. And that reduces inflammation in your body and calms down the attack on your thyroid. So it's quite intense. First I had to remove gluten, then all grains, dairy, beans, peas, seeds, nuts, tomatoes, chilies, peppers, aubergines, did I say potatoes, any seeds and any beans. So loads and loads of foods that I couldn't eat. So I had very little left, which meant that I was eating a lot of the same foods all the time. Now, another thing I didn't know is that often to have an autoimmune illness, you need something called leaky gut. So I'll try not to make this too complicated, but your intestines are like a mesh, and food travels through your intestines. But when you have leaky gut, those holes in that intestine are quite big. So food that should go through actually goes into your bloodstream. And that's when your body says, there's a foreign body in the body, we're going to attack it. And then what it does is accidentally attacks my thyroid instead. It thinks it's the enemy, and it starts to attack it. So by removing all these inflammatory foods, I've stopped that kind of foreign body attack. But I was relying on a small set of foods, and unfortunately they were then getting into my bloodstream, which meant that I became intolerant to them. So on top of all those foods that I had to cut out, I was also intolerant to things like chicken, kale, avocados, broccoli, sweet potatoes, so all your common foods. So it was really difficult for me to actually find foods to eat. So it was quite an intense time for me, and me being me, I was determined to get this right. Like, I'm one of those overdoers, like if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it properly. So I became obsessed with becoming well and doing everything that was suggested. It's quite complex, as you've probably gathered by now. So I got myself a health coach, and she helped me navigate my way through how to look after my body. So through diet, but also lifestyle. So relaxing, resting, chilling out. and also herbs and supplements because my body wasn't actually utilising the nutrients and vitamins from my body. So I had lots of kind of tingling down the arm from lack of B12, tired from lack of iron, and a few other things. And over time, I actually became a lot better, and I was able to get back to work, and life was fairly normal. I actually managed to go away with the girls, had a few nights out, and I was good. And then my worst fear kind of happened. I actually became sick again, but it was so much worse than the time before. The chronic fatigue was awful. I don't know if any of you have suffered fatigue, but it's really different to tiredness. So fatigue is not cured by going to bed and getting a good night's sleep. It's kind of in your body. So if anybody that works out and has done a really hardcore workout, you've got all that lactic acid in your muscles and it feels like that you can't take another step, your legs are just dead. That's what your whole body feels like. It's just dead. And I was stuck on my sofa for months on end. I mean, I would put off going to the loo because walking up the stairs was hard work. My heart would pound, I'd get a little bit dizzy, my knees would get sore. It just took an awful lot of energy. Some days having a shower was an achievement. And this was really hard for me because I'm one of those get up and go get it kind of persons. I work long hours. I have the attitude that your body will do what your mind tells it to. And so I was just stuck on this sofa with no life, and it became like the worst Groundhog Day ever because I had this burning sore throat and banging headache, and it was literally there every day that I woke up. So I'd open my eyes and yeah, it's there again. Like, it's just Groundhog Day over and over again. And I became really quite low and quite miserable and felt really unhappy. I struggled to talk to friends because I had nothing to say. I didn't go out anywhere, I didn't do anything, I just watched TV. All I had to talk about was the food and autoimmune and how to fix your life because I was obsessed by reading it all the time. And believe it or not, other people aren't as interested in it as I was. I couldn't sleep. I was exhausted. I was absolutely shattered. So I was exhausted, but I couldn't sleep. I would go to bed and I'd stare at the ceiling, and I had to learn to just get up and go and do something to try and come back again, or I'd fall asleep and I'd wake up an hour later. I'd get up at 2 in the morning, do emails for 2 hours or watch something on TV and then go back to bed at 4. I just used to like to stare at the ceiling and think, how can somebody be so tired but not sleep? It was so frustrating, and I used to get really upset because I knew that I would wake up the next day feeling exhausted again, and it was just Groundhog Day. So this time what I considered was had to admit defeat. I had to go to my GP and get signed off, and that was really hard for me to do. When I was ill the previous time, I kind of worked through it, just took half days and worked from home. But I had to go and get signed off, and that was a big failure for me, really upset by that. So I rested. In all, I took 3 months off, and then I went back to work because I felt a bit better. I was still getting fatigue, I still had rashes, I still had digestive issues, but I was less tired and I had less fatigue. So I went back to work on a part-time basis. I did 3 or 4 hours a day. But by the end of 2 weeks, I was on the floor again. My throat was burning, my head was banging, I couldn't concentrate, I wasn't sleeping again, the fatigue was back full pelt. So once again, I got signed off of work. And again, I rested. And I'm really quite on it, as you've probably gathered by now. And I went back to the doctors and I was like, I need something else, like what's happening here? And I got referred to an endocrinologist, which is a specialist for the thyroid. And he put me on a new drug. And it suppresses the immune, so it's stopping all these reactions. And I took it and I had great success. After 2 weeks, the headache and the sore throat had pretty much gone. So I tried to go back to work again. This time I started with 2 hours every other day. And the next week I did 3 hours every other day. But by the end of the second week, bang, headache and sore throat back again every day. And just by this point I was in absolute despair. I was like, what else can I do? I've changed my life. I've cut out all these foods. I don't drink. I don't go out. I make sure I sleep 8 hours a night. I go to bed at the same time every night. I get up at the same time every day. I make sure I get out in sunlight. Like, I did everything by the book, and I was still getting sick. I didn't understand it, what was going on. I was just so miserable. and so unhappy that I decided I needed something else. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I had to try something else. And I thought maybe I need some sort of coach, because by this point I was starting to think, I don't know if I can do my job anymore. I need to do something else. I'm really passionate about this health. I don't want anyone else to live like this. So I was starting to think about other things. Maybe I need some sort of coach. And so when you become aware of something, it's everywhere you go. So I was on Facebook and I saw this advert for Change Your Life in 30 Days, completely overhaul it. And I thought, yes, I need some of that. So I sent him a message, and it was Lewis Raymond Taylor. And we spoke, and it turns out I needed a lot more than 30 days, but also he'd already filled that position. So he talked to me about some coaching. And I was a bit dubious because all of my problems were physical, weren't they? And this guy was a mindset coach, so how was he going to help me? But at the same time, I knew that I needed to do something different. I mean, I'd tried everything else by the book when it comes to health. I needed something else. So I signed up. And actually I had a combination of Lewis and Chelsea, who was on, and they've been fantastic in helping me to kind of unpick what was going on in my mind and getting my health back. And what I learned really is that I had some limiting beliefs, some stuff going on in the back of my mind that I didn't really realise, and these things were feeding into my life, the way that I behaved, and my habits. So I had these thoughts that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't deserve love, and that I was quite boring, I was uninteresting, and I didn't have a lot to offer. And this was particularly heightened by the fact I was very sick and I couldn't go out and I couldn't do anything, I had nothing to talk about. But actually these things were always there. They were just heightened. So this kind of really explains why it is that I was such a hard worker. And I haven't talked about that, but I would work 12-hour days. I'd come home and work some more. I always kind of felt a bit inferior, like I didn't really deserve the job and I had to go above and beyond. Everyone else in my team had a degree and I had half a BTEC in performing arts. So I just didn't feel like I deserved it, and I was petrified of being found out, of not being worthy of this job, so I would always go over and above. And I just set myself these goals and targets that I wanted to do all these things, both in my work and personal life, and it was unreasonable. I could never have achieved them all. So every day I was setting myself up to fail, and then I would berate myself for failing, and I was just in this cycle of pushing myself and berating myself and pushing myself and berating myself. And even when I did rest, my mind never switched off. I'd be sat on my sofa thinking, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, why am I not doing this, I've got this list of things to do, I should be cleaning my house. And I could just never rest. I could never allow myself to switch off and actually enjoy. Yeah, it was ridiculous. I would just set myself up for failure every day, and I had this never-ending cycle, and it's no wonder I didn't really like myself very much. And the other thing that I really learned from coaching is that thoughts and reality are different. So I had these long-held beliefs that actually I was quite unlovable and that my parents didn't really love me, which when I look back now is ridiculous. They did love me. It's just that, and they do love me, it's that I expected to receive love from them in a certain way, and when I didn't get it that way, I felt that that meant that they didn't love me. And because I had this issue with my mum and my stepdad, and my biological father was absent, I hadn't seen him since I was 15, I was in my 30s by the time this all kicked off, I felt that the thing that was in common was me. So it must be me, there's something wrong with me, why don't they love me, what's wrong with me? And I just, I felt really like I didn't deserve love and that I wasn't capable of people loving me. And actually, I think what triggered me becoming sick again this time around is because I started to date this guy, and he was just so willing to give me this love. He just loved me, just like that. And I think subconsciously I couldn't accept it because I didn't deserve love, right? I wasn't worthy and I wasn't lovable. So how can this guy just give me all this love? And I think that's probably what triggered me to become quite poorly. again. Coaching is what made the difference. And even though I was dubious about it helping me because all my problems were physical, actually it was my behaviours that led me to push myself to the point of burnout. And those behaviours were driven by my thoughts of myself. And by unpicking those and rewriting those thoughts about myself, I was able to give myself a break, which means that I was able to rest physically and mentally and switch off. And I learned to be kind to myself. And instead of saying things like, you can't do that, or you're boring, or you're not creative, or you can't draw, I started saying, you're awesome, you're amazing, you're lovable, you're creative, you can draw, you can do anything you like if you put your mind to it. So I just started telling myself these things. And even though it didn't make a difference initially, because actually I kind of felt like I was lying to myself, subconsciously it was starting to go in, and over time it made a huge difference. And I can look in the mirror and I can look at you and I can say that I am lovable and I am deserving and I am worthy and I love myself, and I don't feel like I'm lying to myself anymore. And for me that's been a real gift, because changing those beliefs about myself has allowed me to get my health back, which I always said I had one goal in life, and that was to be happy. And to be happy, I need to be healthy, because I can't live my life if I'm not healthy. So actually, coaching was the thing that made the difference for me. And I believe in coaching so passionately that, number one, I am now a lifestyle coach, and number two, that I will continue to have a coach, because I completely and utterly believe in it. I guess what I've kind of learned along the way is that health is not just what you're eating, it's not just about exercise, it's also about what you are saying and believing and thinking about yourself. They're really important. So I got so far in my recovery by working on my health, physically, through food and lifestyle. But actually the finishing piece was working on my mind. And I think that it's really important to have a two-prong approach to health and well-being, because one won't work without the other, so you need the two. I guess what I want to say is I don't want other people to suffer, because for me this was over a number of years and it was a long time and it was miserable. It was really hard to deal with, and I now want to give back and help other people not have to suffer that. And I'd love to catch people so much earlier on in the process, and if I can help people understand that prevention is better than cure, don't wait till it gets so bad, because trust me, it's really hard to undo. I have this autoimmune condition, I've got too much mercury in my body, my hormones are unbalanced, and I've got leaky gut. So, you know, it took a long time for those things to get that bad, and it takes a long time to undo it. And I'd like to say I'm pretty much there these days. I'm full of energy, full of life. I don't get headaches, I don't have sore throats, I don't have rashes, I don't have stomach ache, and I don't have fatigue. But don't wait, don't delay, like catch these symptoms early. If you've got a rash, if you've got a headache, if you've got a stomach ache, that's your body giving you a sign. It's talking to you. Don't ignore it, because it's telling you. You don't just get headaches, you don't just get stomach ache. It is for a reason. And, you know, listen to your body and understand what it is and stop it before it ends up as an autoimmune condition or worse, other things. Because these things are preventable, and I would love to help people prevent these things. So if any of this sounds like you, if any of this resonates, then let's have a chat. Please talk to me. Please book in with me. Let's have a conversation. And let's figure out whether or not I can help you. Download my ebook, take all the tips, or even just go online, have a look. But like, just start being conscious, start thinking. When you eat something and you feel tired or your stomach hurts, ask yourself why. Try to identify patterns and try to figure out exactly why that is. Because as I say, I'm going to say it again, prevention is better than cure. Don't suffer. Prevention is better than cure. Listen to the signs that your body is giving you. Learn to understand the language that your body is speaking, and love yourself. And as I say, health is not just about what you're eating. It's not just about going to the gym. It's what you're thinking, what you're saying, and what you're believing about yourself. Thank you for watching
watching my video. If you enjoyed that, why not subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit the notification button. That way you'll be alerted anytime I post a new video, and you won't miss my top tips on how to live a happy, healthy, stress-free life.